Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pass the Syrup, the agency podcast. It's for agents. It always features agents. We're obsessed with agency. We're here for you guys. Oh, that sounded really cheesy. I've never said that before, but that's exactly what this is. It's a bit of fun. It's a light-hearted podcast where we're going to talk about some agency issues. Today, I am joined by three fantastic guests. Actually, you know what? That's unfair. Paul, I have no idea. You could be a disaster. We're joined by Paul Ratner, who I've never met, first time guest. Welcome to the podcast, Paul. No pressure, but you are on with two legends, Claire Hughes and Spencer Lawrence, two legends of the estate agency industry. So no pressure, but
right.
do great things.
I'll see what I can do.
Welcome, guys. How is everyone? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Too late. We can't say Happy New Year now. Now
Yeah,
the
we're done
Christmas
with
tree's gone. The refuse people have picked them up.
Yesterday, I was cycling in and I saw someone still has their Christmas tree up in their front window. That's weird, right?
They're probably waiting for an estate agent to go around to take the photos or something.
What, for next year? Outrageous.
Maybe a long holiday, a very long holiday, you know, who knows?
Yeah. Lucky them. Yeah, lucky them. So we're going to crack straight on. Spencer, I'm going to come to you first, mate. What are we talking about today? What have you got for us?
Wild oscillations is my topic. And what do I mean by that? I think for me, if you look at agency and, you know, look at LinkedIn, various platforms, looking at other agents, there seems to be this sort of wild oscillation of it's really good news. Look at me, look at us, we're so great and everything's fantastic, or the doom mongers. And I just think there is this sweet spot in the middle, which is coaching, training, mentoring, how are we going to become better agents, rather than having this sort of, clickbait stuff, which is interesting occasionally, but when it just becomes mainstream, someone saying, look at what I've done, aren't I fantastic? I've just done this. It's just like, it's a bit too much. I think agency and agents within it needs to position themselves as the guide, and the customer, the client, however you want to phrase it, is the hero of the story. We're there to guide the hero through. And with the sort of doom-monger news, it's like, tends to be the same stuff. Like I've got issues with recruitment. The people I get in are rubbish, but you're making the judgment call. The onboarding is no good, but it's your onboarding. You know, it's just the yin and the yang is just too much for me. And I just, nice tight bandwidth where people are on a journey of learning and betterment and togetherness. This is different brands and agencies. We can all help each other rather than, oh, look at them. Look, they're saying they're doing really well and look at them. They're in trouble or they're struggling, or it's another negative bit of news about agency. And it's just like, let's stick to some middle ground just for a bit, people. That's where I'm at. That's my challenge. That's my issue at the moment.
You know what Chris Watkins says about the pie charts, don't you? Nobody's interested in the pie charts apart from your mum, or you and your mum. So that's.
I can guarantee you, my mum's not interested in pie charts.
Same. My mum's same. Absolutely zero interest.
That's one aspect.
I think what's interesting is it's very easy to get bogged down in the sort of macroeconomic news and disaster news, everything else. If we had been agents, estate agents, commercial agents in any decade of the last 100 years, there would have been times we could have said this is the worst ever. You know, 1920s, there was a stock market crash. There was a war in the 40s. If you've been around in the 50s, that was the Suez crisis, the 70s, the oil price collapse. The point is, every single decade has its challenges, but I do think there's always opportunities. And what I'm finding with commercial property, which is where I come from, there are certain sectors which are really struggling. High street shops are struggling, offices are struggling because of work from home. But actually, there are certain sectors that are doing really well, like self-storage, student accommodation development. And very often, it's really just a question of focusing on where the opportunities are and not being like the cab driver that drives around in circles and ignores the fact there's people hailing cabs. You know, you can sort of become an autopilot and get so bogged down with sort of the bad news that you forget there's plenty of ways of doing deals in this market.
But with the negative posts, I mean, so the doom and gloom, everybody loves that. I mean, that's what the Daily Mail survives on that, doesn't it? Sort of, you put a negative headline there, everybody's going to click on all, property prices are crashing. When they won't do the same with, when the interest rates have come off a little bit, there are some much better fixed term rates out there. So they're not going to give that the same, coverage, are they? But so what are you saying, Spencer, that as an industry, we have I don't know, a duty to kind of put out, this is how we get better. Don't complain about you can't recruit the right staff. Look at how you, as you were saying, onboard them better, train them better, support them better. Then make sure that their career path is as it should be. Make sure that they can see the career, because it might not be within your own network, your own business. They might have to go elsewhere.
Sure. For me, it's like the consideration of we need to be students of our game. And actually, if we operate a lot of white noise, either perceived negative or perceived positive, like, what is your 90-day sprint? What are you trying to achieve? Not from a numbers perspective, and you're going to do deals agreed and how many you've got on and manage properties and all this stuff. They're metrics and they're important. But what I'm talking about here is actually personal betterment. How are you going to be a better listener in 90 days? Because people talk about having better conversations, but who's been trained how to listen? And for me, listening is absolutely key to success, because that's where the magic is. That's where the issue is. That's where their challenge is. And in order, although I'm talking a bit too much now, so I need to listen a bit harder. The point is, make sure your client is afforded the time to talk. They don't want to be bamboozled with lots of information by agents, and challenge yourself as individuals, as a business, as a brand. What's the plan for improvement? Not just from a numbers perspective. How many businesses are actually looking at, numbers of sick day or engagement in the office or community work or charity stuff, and not just tick box stuff, actually getting involved with it. And for me, it's just super important to, if you look at sport, for example, they look at data and stats all the time about how people are going to improve the pace of a player, how many, like in football, how many kilometers they cover per match. Like, what metrics are you going to look at yourself in your 90-day sprint to make sure you're on a path of betterment to improve, so you're a better version of yourself, rather than this is really great, this is super negative. It just drives me bananas. So I've actually stopped. My promise to myself for the first 6 months is we're just going to focus on us and the team and improving things. And everything else is lovely, and we're here to help other agents if we can. But I'm just going to avoid certain channels because it upsets me. I'm just a bit sensitive, Ben. What can I say?
But I think there's a massive chunk of people that will feel the exact same way as you do. You can become disillusioned with your feed, for instance. I posted something last week about sort of in a similar area, the highs and lows that we seem to experience in agency. Last year, I started the year and I was optimistic. I give commentary on the market, but I don't, it's not a prediction. It's just, this is where the market is right now. But actually, when I talk about positive optimism, it's around our own business, because we control the controllables. And so I know that we can do these 6 activities with relentless consistency, and they will generate opportunities for us, and we will sell more homes, and we will service more people, and we will do more great things. So I was positively optimistic about the market last year. I remember going into a meeting. I'll be intentionally vague, because if I'm too specific, everybody will know who I'm talking about and who was in the room. But I came out, walked into the meeting and said, I'm positively optimistic. I think it's going to be really challenging. I think it's exactly what a state agency needs after this crazy few years. A tough year is exactly what we need to remember what's involved in being great agents. There's nothing wrong with that. Strong market makes for a weak agent. Tough agent will toughen us all up. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. I'm pumped for the year. Went around the room, 8 of us in the room. By the time I left the meeting, it's like suicidal. This is like the 7 other people in the room it's the end of the world. businesses are going under, we're not going to survive, pipeline this, sales this. I said, well, we started last year with a horrendous pipeline, but it doesn't mean we can't control it, get it back up, do the things we need to do.
Well, I think
fast forward 12 months, and our business had an astonishing year. Mindset, attitude, belief, we got it done. And it sounds like I'm bragging, I'm not. Versus what the market's done versus just where we were last year, really, really happy. This year, 12 months on, my feed has never been so alive with positivity about the housing market. I cannot believe how extreme some of the statements are, some of the comments, some of the rhetoric. Massive agencies are changing their position from a -3 to a +4 by the end of the year. We are going to be doing so much more business. We're selling this, we're selling that. I'm all about positive. I'm pleased for people. I really am. This is not a negative. I don't want them to be selling. I just want us to be a little bit more considered, a little bit more level-headed.
Yeah.
I actually think this year is going to be a bit more challenging because the media position is going to be a bit more positive, and it's going to possibly lead to some sellers going back a few years and thinking the market is much more positive now. Pricing is going to go in this direction, but actually buyers are still paying double what they were 3 years ago. It's a more confusing set of circumstances for the consumer. Is going to require a lot more education, and that was the point of my main post, that in 2024, I think, it fits perfectly. It's like you've read this post, Spencer. 2024 is going to be so much more about educating yourself, educating your team, educating your consumer base. That if we just go in saying market's wonderful, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people this year. And I think with wild oscillations, if we could just be a bit more considered. I love be the guide, the client is the hero. I've heard the client the hero before, and I've made a note that we should be the narrator. Really, we should help guide the hero. I really like that. That's going into what we discussed on Friday in our session. Did anyone watch Ted Lasso? Sorry, I'll stop waffling. I just want to say, does anyone ever watch Ted Lasso?
No.
I love it. I've fallen in love with it. We're on the last episode of season 3 tonight. Last night's episode is so just catch you, Paul and Claire, catch you guys up. Ted Lasso, really popular Apple. It's an online show, and it's about Richmond FC, so make-believe football club based in Richmond, and they bring over an American coach, and it's a whole long story. But Ted Lasso is basically a wonderful human being, which is exactly what you maybe need more of in the world of football, because that's somewhere where I've become particularly disillusioned. Football, salaries, the way fans are treated. But he's a great human being. Yesterday, he's in a big match. It's coming towards the end of the season, and his team, Richmond, are playing Man City, and it's right up at the top. At the end of the game, one of the teams have won, and he goes over and shakes Pep Guardiola's hand. Pep Guardiola is, arguably the most famous football manager on the planet, and known for his ability and coaching of his players. And there's an exchange of about 10 seconds where he says, thanks, good, congratulations. And Pep says, don't worry about the wins or the losses. It's just about helping these guys be the best version of themselves on and off the pitch. And there's such the right message. There's an obsession with winning everything, but actually just help them get better.
If you take that, obviously stick with football, and I just cannot get away from football. I don't watch football. My husband insists that we have to have Sky Sports to watch football. He said, I don't mind not watching it, and then what's he doing? He's watching football. Elder son works in football, so we get together. He's telling me about transfers and this and that, and all I can say is, or all I can see is that it's all about the money, and it's not about the grassroots football. So now I don't need to see Ted Lasso at all. So 3 series, you've summed it up in a couple of sentences there. I don't need to watch it. I don't need to watch 3 seasons of it. But
can I just say, I think it is. I think it is good. I think it's a good message. What I found in 2023 was very difficult, is having to be the bearer of bad news to clients, and not to be put in that position where you feel like you become their frenemy, where you're giving bad news. And clients are starting to wonder, well, is this person just trying to push me into a deal because they want to make a fee? When actually you're being honest, you're telling them where the market is. And very often clients will be aware where the market is as well. And I'd be interested to know your opinion on that. How do you get a client to see where the market is today without it coming across like you're just trying to push them into something.
Claire, Spencer, do you want to go first?
I think. Sorry, Claire, go on. Go after you, please.
When if we're talking about homeowners rather than landlords, and the thing is with the commercial market, they're probably, you know, more aware of their market anyhow. Whereas if it's a single homeowner, they've not moved for 30 years, and they've may well have been sort of bamboozled by some of the other local agents. To me, it's spending time with them, evidencing it, explain exactly what's been done, and you know, you didn't sell it with this agent, even though you know they put it on at a ridiculous price. Did they tell you why? And no, they didn't tell me why. Okay, well, this is why I think it didn't sell. What else did they do? What other marketing have they done? What else could we do? And yeah, gradually, and it's getting them to trust you by building that relationship. And that takes time, and that means you have to listen. I 100% agree with you there, Spencer. Just listen to your clients, and what their motivation is, and it's a story. And to me, it's all about the people and the story, isn't it? And helping them move rather than the transaction itself. And obviously, you know, we have to make money. That's what we're here for. But they don't really care about that. They want to move house for whatever reason. And
I think you're right. Certainly on the commercial side, I'm finding that it used to be that we just put offers in and would say, this is the price, these are the conditions, here's the time frame. And now I'm finding when I'm acting for buyers, we're putting forward offers and evidencing why we're making this offer, because otherwise there might be some sort of cynicism. And even today, I'm putting an offer this afternoon where we're having to write a cover letter to explain what's changed over the last 6 months. That's why we're at the price we are. And I do feel like that's a difference in the market. It might be an improvement because maybe there should be some sort of a justification for why you're making offers, and maybe it makes the whole system more efficient. But it's put us in a strange position. We're having to sort of not just make these offers, but actually justify them at the same time.
From a commercial agency perspective, what does good client feedback look like? Because I've only got a very limited amount of commercial experience, and from a residential perspective, I imagine it's slightly different.
Good client feedback. Well, the thing about commercial is it's a very varied sector. So, you know, sometimes if you're talking to a pension fund, it might be that they would buy across the board. They'll buy industrial offices, shopping centres, high street shops, everything else. It's very important to know when they really reach their quota of a particular sector so that you're not wasting your time. You know, it might be that they've spent all the money they've got in industrial, they don't want any more of that. It's good to know that because you can still be running around the market unaware. Pricing feedback is always very important. It gives you a good feel. You know, everything's relative. So if you find out that for a Tesco supermarket, they'll pay 5.25%, it's good to know that as a benchmark for every other supermarket you see. And then you can use that for all the other retail. So you can use that one piece of feedback as a jumping point for everything else. That's useful. You know, and by and large, I mean, the whole point is it's a process of honing what someone wants. No one expects to speak to a commercial client first time round and get it right the first time round. I'm sure it's the same with a estate agency on the residential side. But once you start finding out why someone rejected something, you're closer to working out what they want. And it's a bit like that game, you know, colder, warmer, where you're just getting closer and you're finding out, okay, so they don't really want to be in West Hampstead, really they want to be in Hampstead, or, you know, they don't really want a house with a small garden, they need a bit more space. You know, you start sort of getting a picture and then you'll end up getting the right deal, which is why you tend to do deals with the clients you've known the longest and the people you've worked with, you know, on the most other opportunities, because you really get a feel, get under the skin of what it is they want.
And so am I right to think that quite often the client in your world is the buyer, the purchaser, the inwards movement?
Yeah, so I think whereas one of the reasons it's probably different from residential is there's a lot more acting for buyers. So the predominant amount of my work is acting for buyers, but act for sellers as well. And they look to me not just to source the deal, and it could be anywhere across the country, but also to give advice, do the negotiation. So yeah, so there's a lot of acting for buyers on our side.
Do you manage them as well, Paul?
I don't manage the properties. No, I mean, there are, you know, some of the big agencies have management teams as well and rent review teams, all the rest of it.
I was interested when you were talking about some of the things you cover, you mentioned student accommodation, which to me, I would have viewed as residential lettings, but if you're working with pension funds, the build to rents and the student accommodation, you now consider that to be commercial.
Well, we see it, I suppose, as a use class outside of residential, but it is part of the living sector. And there are some companies that are developers who focus on all of the living sectors. So they'll do residential, build to rent, senior living. They might do care homes. They might do student accommodation. Anything that could be counted within the living sector.
Yeah.
I guess we do see student accommodation as a variant of the living sector.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, we should have a commercial agent more often. We're learning stuff. This is.
Well, I would have thought. I would have actually thought the thing that must drive you guys mad from our side is that there's a lot of developers now who only want to build to rent, because build to sell is very difficult. It's difficult to predict how long it's going to take to sell 50, 100, 150 flats, and what price am I going to get and all the rest of it. So what people want to do is find a site, get the planning, find a forward fund or a pension fund who not just funds it but commits to buy it at the end. And those properties never hit the market. So although a council, Camden Council, let's say, can say, oh, we've hit our housing target, in reality, those properties never actually are going to be sold. They'll just be sold to one buyer. And I wonder, doesn't that infuriate you as estate agents, that you're seeing a new block being built and you have no opportunity to actually get those sales instructions?
It's not the market I would deal with anyhow. So no,
Steady Eddie.
Doesn't impact me. Yeah, I'm steady Eddie. Yeah.
You know what though, Claire? Right, we both said, or you said it just as I was about to, and a moment ago, Paul asked about feedback, and you mentioned about building trust. There's something in who you are, the way you operate. Obviously, we've sat next to each other over dinner. We've spoke a few times. Been on the podcast. Your personal branding must be absolutely bang on, because I'm describing you in a way you would describe yourself, which drives enormous trust. That you are what you're so authentic. So I think, without sounding like a patronizing idiot, you're doing an amazing job on personal brand.
There you go. There you go.
I think it's so important. I think people overlook it and they want to be a certain thing online. They want to be a different thing in real life. But yeah, I mean, that's I mean it as a huge compliment that you are.
I'll take it
everywhere
as well.
You are. It's really nice.
I would say as well, actually, I mean, it's not my company, it's Spencer's company. I think Paramount's got a great brand in West Hampstead. I do see them as the best of the West Hampstead estate agents.
Oh, you're going to lose a few people there, Paul.
Well,
you've got to be much more grey than that.
No, I do think there are some brands where you just trust them and they're good at their job. So I don't mind congratulating people when they've done well. I think Paramount's a great company.
Anything with Spencer at the helm, it's going to be just a bit above average.
It's bumpy. It's bumpy.
Paul, let's continue with you. Let's continue on the commercial. We're all learning here. We're loving it. What are you going to bring to the table? Because of our 12 viewers, most are going to work in residential estate agency. So or estate genetics. Anyway. What you got for us?
So when we spoke before the show, I was saying that maybe you'd want to hear how can you make money in commercial property. There's two. Sorry, you're still there. Your screen's gone blank.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'm still here. The camera will come back on in a sec. It does this from time to time just to wind me up.
Cat's having a sleep.
That's it's bored of everything I'm contributing to this show so far. This is the cat telling me to up your game. So sorry. Oh, there we go. Sorry, Paul, interruption there.
I thought it'd be useful for people who don't necessarily think about commercial property, look into commercial property, that there's three main differences between residential and commercial. The first is on the investment side, that my impression is when you're buying a residential property as an investment, buy to let, you're really investing in the property and the location. Whereas when you're buying commercial, there's another dimension to it, which is you're really investing in a company very often, because the tenancies are so much longer. So whereas an AST on a residential flat might only be a year with a 6-month break, if you buy a commercial property, you can have a tenant for 10, 15, 20 years. I'm looking at something which is let for 57 years, although that's very rare. So your fate is intertwined with the fate of that company. So if you go and buy, let's say, a pub in East London and it's £80,000 a year rent, you let it to an independent company for 10 years. If that company goes bust, you've got a problem. You've got a vacant property, voids, letting fees, everything else. If they don't just survive but thrive, and in 10 years' time, they're a huge company and they sign up with you again, then not only have you got that huge rent every year, and hopefully the rent's also gone up, but you also, the value of your investment will go up as well, because the value of that tenant has gone up. If they renew in 10 years' time and they're now one of the biggest pub companies, then you've got a great investment. You didn't have any management headache, no letting fees, no phone calls in the middle of the night about the boiler, no stories in the Daily Mail of how they organized a party and 300 people turned up. None of that. All you've had to do is sit and watch your investment grow. I think there's also, the second point is probably about planning, that I think there's often more opportunity for large scale development with commercial property. A lot of my clients buy offices, industrial, parades of shops with uppers, but they do it just because they want to do a big residential development or a mixed use scheme. And because so many of these sites are quite large sites, you might get a couple of acres at a time in a city centre sometimes. It means that you get a chance to do something really fantastic, a real regeneration piece. And the third way I think people can make money is in this sort of opco-propco realm, where you're operating a business, but you're also buying the company. So probably a good example of this is a company like McDonald's. You might have seen the founder about Ray Kroc, who set up McDonald's. McDonald's obviously sell burgers and they have franchises, but they also owned the property. So they were making money as a property company as well as a burger company. And if you can do that, and you can be in the hotel sector, it can be a self-storage, it can be student accommodation, it can be many things. But if you can do that, then you haven't just got a great business, you've also got the underlying value of the assets. And I think those are the three things that if you can get into one of those sectors as a commercial investor, you can do very well.
So I've got a question about the third part, about the McDonald's model.
Yeah.
So how often do you interact with businesses, I guess, that are set up in that way? Is that common, that you'd find businesses that maybe create franchises or license arrangements and then acquire business premises for those franchisees? Is that
Yes, sometimes. I mean, it's more on, I suppose for me, I do a lot with the self-storage companies. I did a big deal with Big Yellow a couple of years ago in Kentish Town. That is a very good example of a company that is a self-storage company, but they own a massive portfolio. They buy their own sites, they do the development, and the development becomes part of the business plan. And, a lot of these companies, there are some people who are setting up self-storage companies so that in 5-10 years' time, they can just sell the whole portfolio.
Right.
Because it's of running business. I also speak a lot to Accor hotels. They don't buy their own hotels, but they have a lot of developers and investors who know them, who like them, and who will go ahead and buy a hotel so that Accor can be the managing agents. Or they might even develop a hotel so that Accor can be the managing agents. So there is that kind of slightly incestuous nature between the two, because if you're going to go ahead and build, let's say, a 100-bed hotel, you want to have some idea that you've got the right tenant or the right management agreement at the end. So you do find there's a lot of synergy with both of those two sides.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So to use the storage facility example, the concept is I buy a large piece of land, I build not necessarily large, but a piece of land, I build a storage facility on it and run that business myself, or I bring people in to run it for me. That's an ongoing concern until I'm ready to do something else with the land, and then I might go residential or do something else on that piece of land. Is that in your experience? What's the life cycle of a strategy like that?
Well, a lot of the self-storage guys don't sell, so we're not really quite sure. But with hotels, which is probably a better example, after, let's say, 3 years, you've got up to the full occupancy, which might be 90%. You've proven you've got 3 years accounts, and all of a sudden it becomes a much more investment grade deal. Whereas a vacant hotel is not so interesting to, say, a pension fund, because they don't have any real sort of semblance of how much money is this likely to make. So the idea is that if you develop, let's say, a hotel, maybe 3 years down the line, you might really be considering, okay, this is now an investment grade property. I can sell it on to just a family office that can see where the income is. And also they're not having to worry about the voids anymore, because that hotel's established itself, people know where it is, and it's making revenue.
So would a pension fund buy something like that?
Well, pension funds can be a little bit wary of hotels because a lot of them are done on
Yeah.
management agreements rather than leases. But anything which has a lease at the end of it. So they used to buy a lot of travel lodge and Premier Inns because those had leases. And yeah, pension funds, if you can have anything with a lease, and particularly where there's RPI rent reviews every 5 years, the rent review
Right.
set RPI, normally capped and collared at 2 to 4%. A pension fund would probably be interested, yes.
It's a different world.
It is, yeah.
It really is. Fascinating.
It
Well,
is
I had
fascinating.
I mean, I did have one client who said to me, he said, Paul, if you find us a tent in the middle of nowhere, let for 15 years to Tesco, we'll buy it. You know, because it's just, for us, it's just a bond, and that's how we look at it. Obviously, the residual value of that tent is, you know, I don't know, £100, so whatever. But it's a different way of looking at things because they're looking at income generation and security of income. And if you have a very solid tenant paying a very good rent, and the rent, and you know, even if they were to go pop, okay, you know, that rent's actually achievable in the market with another tenant, then yeah, then that is an investment grade value.
That's really yeah, this is very interesting. It's so different to what we do, or what I do anyway. We at our old business, we had a really small commercial division. Division is a nice way of saying we had one person that looked after some commercial properties, and we decided to build that because we were going to focus on the small high street units because they always, a lot of the time they had residential above them. We thought it was a really good way to meet freeholders and owners of the residential property above, plus all the increased brand awareness with those crazy ridiculous commercial boards, and we ran that for a few years, and I can count on one hand the number of residential properties it introduced us to. But it was an interesting insight into there, but that was very much we would sell an occasional freehold, but mainly it was leasehold lettings, so it's nothing like what you're talking about, Paul.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, the thing about shops and uppers is, sorry, just to say, what else? With shops and uppers, sorry, is that thing in the background? With shops and uppers, very often an investor won't necessarily want to sell off the flats because it actually devalues the shop. Because when investors like to have the whole building unbroken, and once you start selling off the shop, once you start selling off the flats, the yield you'll get on the shop is likely to be higher, which means the value is lower. So, you know, so in general, people do tend to keep those investments intact, in which case, if what you were looking for was just to sell the flats, I can see why that might have been a problem.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, right.
That's a
Timing
different
wise,
world.
we're doing okay. Claire, big finish. What have
Right.
you got for
Okay.
us?
I actually had two I wanted to mention, but you know, we're running out of time. So
There we go. So listen.
No. Shameless plug for the Women in Estate Agency
I knew that was coming.
You knew it, didn't you? You knew it. I could not. I hope you guys have all bought tickets and got tickets for your teams. If you haven't, then why not?
Where should we be looking for those tickets, Claire? Tell us.
You go to the Women in Estate Agency Facebook. No, you can't go to the group because you're men, but Women in Estate Agency website, they're on there. There is some discount. You can buy a bundle. So if you're taking a whole team, you can buy a bundle. And then there's we're calling it a mixer. So basically it's the after party, and people are a bit confused about that. Well, we didn't want to say, you know, there's still lots of conversations that can be had. And the keynote speakers, the two of them, they're both going to be at the mixer. But I think we've still got some work to do. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do, you know, with the whole, I'm going to call it a movement, but just promoting the event, because people still see it as a women's event. It's not. It's an event. It's run by Women in Estate Agency, but it's the whole point of it. We're together. We're unstoppable. So last year the tagline, stronger together. This year, together we're unstoppable. And it is very much for men to come along. So that's it. That's my shameless plug.
So Claire, just 30 seconds. What can people expect this year at the conference? Right.
Okay. So we've got some fantastic speakers. Obviously, Kate Faulkner is the keynote speaker for, I think she's going on in the morning. There will be some panel discussions. I'll be on one of those panels. The Women in Residential Property, they will also have a panel discussion. There will be obviously lots of trades there. So there's did anybody come to it last year? Was anybody there?
I didn't, and this year I was invited to be on the Agents Together stand with Sam Offley, which I'm doing. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out now.
Maybe
because it's in March, isn't it?
Yeah. That's fine. If you're
But
on stand.
Sam's not going to be
Oh,
there.
well, somebody else will be there.
Maybe
Certainly
I'll sub in for Sam, Spencer, and me and you.
Ben,
can
let's
the
do
stand.
it.
That sounds good to me.
Sarah Ed will hopefully she'll be doing the Master of Ceremonies. She was absolutely superb last year. She really she just owned that stage. So you didn't go last year, but the venue was great, but for the trade stands it was a little bit crammed. So we've got the most incredible venue this year. It's on the Thames, the what's it called, IET, the Institute of Electric something or other, I don't know. Anyhow, beautiful venue with much more space for the sponsors, and then a fantastic theatre, but still feels quite cozy, even though it's almost double in numbers. And then upstairs for the post-event mixer, so everybody's all in one space, which is much better. So last year was brilliant. I think this year's going to be even better.
I
think we've got 4 going.
You've got 4
going. I'm going to be on a stand with Ben. We're going to work that out later.
It's going to be brilliant.
I don't know what we're going to do. We'll be there.
Agents Together, they'll be pleased. They'll be delighted.
Ben, can I do
no stand left?
Can I do a plug as well if we're doing plugs? Because I'm aware that a lot of people don't know much about commercial property. I do a property tip every day on social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Paul Ratner is my handle for everything. And if people just want to learn about commercial property and development sites, you can watch the videos. Hopefully you'll pick something up.
And Paul, rest assured, everyone's details are shared as part of the show notes, so everyone will have social media links to follow you. Following your 15 minutes of fame and blowing our minds with commercial, I think you can expect at least 4 or 5 people to follow you off the back of this show.
Oh, I'll double.
And you're welcome, I might add.
Yeah.
Claire, big finish. Let's do it.
Right, okay. This is a showstopper, this one. I don't know if you can hear this squeaking in the background.
There we go.
Okay, big finish. No, she's off. All right. Oh, she's actually disappeared. That is a magic trick. That's
big finish.
Big finish.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, look at this.
She just woke up. She was only 8 weeks old. So she was told she had to sleep for the entirety of this. So she nearly did it. So this is Elsie.
So Claire, you've just done exactly what I every week I hope a guest is going to show up with a dog. Last time we had a dog on, the views went through the roof. People love a dog. Great work, Claire. Great work. Elsie, 8 weeks old.
Elsie, yeah. She went to her first EXP meeting yesterday as well.
One of the guys in the Fine and Country Network has a dog. He's up in Northamptonshire, and him and the dog are the team. And so the dog is on everything. All the headshots are him and the dog. Every letter is signed off him and the dog. It is absolutely connected to him. And he said it's the best piece of business he's ever done. I mean, obviously, the dog started off as a pet that he loved and he's obsessed with and goes everywhere with. And now it's the best branding tool he has. So
it's something politicians do, because the theory is meant to be that people who like dogs think, oh, I love that photo, it's got a dog in it. And people who don't care about dogs don't even notice. So it's always, you see a lot of politicians hugging dogs in their photos. So
well, careful there. I mean, I'm not sure Claire's going to appreciate the brand association piece there. Are we discussing Elsie? Are we just getting to enjoy Elsie?
No, but she was squeaking. I didn't know if you could hear it, so I needed to
right. I thought Elsie was actually going to be the subject matter.
No. Oh, right. So have we got time to do another one?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it was the piece, and I haven't got the stats in front of me, but the number of high street agents that have closed in the last 12 months and the number that have opened, obviously. And I just wondered what people's thoughts were on that, really. And I think there is a change in the way that our sector is going to work. But yeah, I just wondered what your thoughts were.
So off the top of my head, to give a bit of context, the headline was 5,000 branches closed.
About 5,000, yeah.
And I think the net loss when you consider new branches opening was something about 1,100, was it? I think about 1,100 branches closed.
Yeah, slightly more than that, yes.
Was it?
But
Okay.
yeah.
So
a loss of over 3,000.
Oh, was it that much?
Well, a net loss, wasn't it?
I thought the net loss was around 1,100, but
I see. Yeah, you might be right. Yeah,
but
definitely
irrespective, we're going back. Yeah, in terms of branches on the high street, they're moving backwards.
Yeah.
Spencer, high street agency, firm believer.
Well, the question was, do you feel like you need a physical branch? You know, can everything just be online and maybe have a small office as a meeting room?
I mean, we pondered this for a long time, particularly when we were locked away as a society for that period. But for us, this is a hub. You know, there's quite a few people who work from this office. It's shared learning. It's an opportunity to check in with people. There's always going to be someone that, you know, there's something that isn't quite right outside of work, which obviously we need to help them resolve. So for us to have the sort of hub that we've got works brilliantly well for us. It's very flexible. People can work from home and bits and pieces if they need to, and unlimited holidays, etc., etc. So for me, the coaching and training element and the cross-pollination between departments, sub-teams, etc., is critical. I'm not surprised with the data really, because there's an explosion of agents opening up, you know, even post-COVID, and, you know, they put their toe in the water and decided it's either too cold or too hot. Obviously, the explosion of the, you know, self-employed models has had an impact on those numbers, and I think that will continue. So I think for agency, it's like, you know, finding your own path. I think from a consumer perspective, they're ultimately looking for the same thing. So your offering from a service proposition needs to make sure that you're calling out to the type of clients that you want to be attracting to your brand from the area that you're residing in. So I think the net position at the end of this year, I think on the basis the market will improve. The general election is going to create a pause in the market, in my humble opinion. But I think that net position will be a bit smaller, with other agencies thinking, hey, we're going to give this a go. It's, you know, pre-regulation, etc. You know, anyone can have a go. We just open an office and call ourselves an estate agent. We've got a nice board with a, you know, our face on it or someone else's face on it, and, you know, it's just about having conversations and we can just get it done, can't we? So I think it's about, you know, continually trying to improve your service offering, being better students of the game, and making sure that, you know, your whole team are in love with what you're trying to achieve as a group and as a business.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, Claire, go on.
How many postcodes? You've just got one office, yeah?
Yeah, we're based in West Hampstead.
And how many postcodes would you cover?
In terms of letting and management, we're over 70 postcodes in London we cover.
Yeah. You see, so I would consider you to be a hub. And I suspect that that's the way. So the corporates who dogs chewing and everything, the corporates who have, you know, my part of London, every sort of almost half mile, they've got another office.
Yeah.
And their staff, you know, when we're talking earlier about people that don't consider it a career necessarily, and, you know, and those are the ones that I think are going to consolidate somehow and effectively work out of a hub, which is what you're doing. So my high street is, how many? There were 11 agents when I first started with EXP. There are now 7. So they keep closing. Some they're buying each other out or whatever. There's one, Douglas Allen. They've just said that they're closing 4 or 5 offices, working out and just hubs so they can cover those postcodes. And they could, you know, some of their team might live then in the postcode they're actually working in, as opposed to, you know, bussing people in, and that, you know, so they can really be part of the community in the same way, you know, that a lot of the self-employed ones are. But yeah, Spencer, you've obviously got a phenomenal business, but you're covering geographically a large area from that one office.
Sure.
I do think it's an
Spencer, just on your
outsider.
business, was Paramount initially a business set up to service the local area, and over time it's sort of organically spread across London as clients have come to you, or was it a strategy to grow out further into London?
No, the latter. We forced it the other way. So what happened is on lettings about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I sat and plotted out where we would be if we had a bit of luck, the wind behind our sails, and we were just carrying on as we were. That's where I'd be, and that's where the business would be, and that's how the people within it would benefit. And it was like, okay, what can we do to spike this? Because certainly when I started, God, I sound like my dad. 27 years ago, people had their patch and there was the invisible sort of glass brick wall. Oh no, we don't do that road. No, it's just crazy. So based on, 3 variables, fee, product, and our relationship with the owner, whether that be the seller or the owner, the landlord, then we would make a decision to move out geographically. So we started that with targeting portfolio owners for rentals and management, and we created a huge problem because of, we didn't have the tech, we didn't have the videography then and all the rest of it, but the business was growing. And then once you've done it, you sort of prove to yourself you can, and then you get a better version of your system and process in doing that. And then on the sales side of things, it was very, very rigid, and even roads were sort of, well, we're trapped in this sort of sector. And we've just, on the lettings side of things, trying to sort of give the resi sales team the confidence to go further. And we've just had an open day on a house in Surbiton, which is 18 miles away. And we had 6 offers on an open day, and it goes to best and finals tomorrow. So to me, geography is not relevant. It's about fee, not necessarily in that order, but most importantly, relationship with the owner and the product. What does it actually look like? And to go and experience new parts of town is exciting, right? Like, I've worked in West Hampstead for more than 25 years. Like, I know it. I want to go to a new area where I'm not familiar with it, and I need to learn about the good, the bad, and the ugly about those areas, and how we can sort of position our offering to make it interesting for the buyer or the renter.
I do think, speaking as an outsider to the residential side, I imagine that someone who's selling their house, they haven't sold for 10 years. They're going to look on Zoopla and Rightmove to see who are the agents selling, but they're also going to walk down their high street and they're going to remember, oh, I saw, whoever it is, Foxton's in the high street. They might walk in there. And I wonder how much business estate agents will lose if they haven't got a physical presence and they haven't got their branding, blazoned somewhere in the high street.
I think that's the ongoing debate, isn't it? I mean, I love the high street. We're currently on the high street, but you heard it here first. We're going to move to a service office location because we're in a 4-story branch on Turning Green Terrace. There's 10 of us in this building. It was part of the exit strategy on the old business, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's a lovely road, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to our business. And actually, our low volume, high price point, high touch point business doesn't need a high street presence, and so it fits us. But we're going to lose a double fronted billboard in a really high profile location when we come away from this. So we need to reallocate marketing spend to make sure we account for that. But back to sort of Claire's initial point about coming away from the high street, and then Spencer's initial retort. My concern, and this has come up a few times, the work from home culture, which in our particular industry, I think does new starters a disservice, because we don't spend enough time together to embed them into I can't speak from experience. This is my perception. It's only my perception because we've never actually inducted or brought on a new member of the team in a work from home capacity, other than someone who worked in operations for us. And we managed to make that work, but it's different, I think is a nice way to say it. So my concern for the future is if we end up working or moving away from high street locations or hubs, and there's more and more, maybe you could say the self-employed model or other models for that matter. How do we upskill people? How do we get them to the required level if they're new to the industry? That's that, you know, or are we going to say we're going to stop taking in new recruits? Or option number 3, high risk, we're just going to let anyone have a go.
I think there's a massive opportunity in the coming years for individuals or companies, established agents maybe, to offer, you know, fast track training. You know, I spoke to a couple of individual agents yesterday, one in Leeds, one based in Bristol, and they're desperately trying to grow their team, but they are working 14 to 16 hours a day. So just speaking to them and trying to recruit new people, that's a challenge. But then once they're in, like, how do you invest that time? And we were just trying to explore different ways about, if there's a 100-meter sprint, how do we get them 75 meters of the way down there, so that the business owner or owners only has to deal with the last 25 meters? Because all the brands are different, but actually there's commonality in what we do. You know, there is shared language. You know, there's different skills that we need to learn as agents, you know, as we develop over time. So I just think there's a gap in the market there, because lots of people talk about the problem, but actually the solution is, if we can go from 0 to heroes faster, that benefits everyone. It benefits the new individual in the team, and obviously it helps the business as well, you know, flourish and grow that much quicker, and takes the pressure, alleviates the stress from the business owner, who is overworked and a bit overwhelmed with things. That was certainly my experience with the 2 conversations yesterday.
And I can see that, you know, you could add value there, but we're talking about small businesses here. What about the corporates? If they start pulling away from the high street and working in the hubs, well, do you think the training won't be the same, or the experience won't be the same for the new starters?
I guess so my experience of, when I first started an agency, I worked for a business that sort of modeled itself on a corporate, but actually it wasn't really. It was 13 branches when I joined. And my experience of working in that business, I only speak about my own, was that training wasn't an important area of the business. You had a reasonably intensive first week and then crack on. Whereas when I left that business, after about 18 months, I went to work for a very, I think, well-known, well-respected, high-quality independent, and training was relentless. On a weekly basis, we'd have a structured session, but also the environment felt different. We were part of a team, and the team, I guess, you know, without sounding too cheesy, look after each other, help each other, bring each other forward in that sort of corporate-y feel. In my first, this is a true story. In my first week, there was a fist fight in the office, and at 22 years old, and, you know, played a lot of sports, and I'm 6'1" and a bit of a lump, I thought, I'm going to do just fine here. If this is like, you know, this is not going to be an issue in my first week. Only, you know, fast forward, what a crazy world, you know, crazy experience agency used to be. So, sorry, Claire, to answer your question, I'm not sure if the corporates do a particularly good job on training people right now. Actually, are they good at that? Do they care about that? Is that something they're strong in? If they go to this hub mentality where they pull more people into a larger environment, then actually I think the opportunity is greater. We went from being a 5-branch business to a 1-branch business and had this insane sales environment. And that first year of being in this, we called it was a super hub years and years and years ago, was amazing. The lettings director was in the room, the sales director was in the room, all the senior sales guys. We had lots of different subsections. Every department were on this massive floor, and it was fantastic. So there's really good opportunity.
Yeah,
but that was because I think it was driven by senior leadership who were really passionate. We saw ourselves more like an academy than an agency, because everyone that joined us was so new to the business. It was our job to get them upskilled as quickly as possible, and we just had fun doing it. We enjoyed it, so we did it.
I mean, for me, Claire, to answer that is, like, I think any agency, irrespective of size or location, if you are expecting success, then you need to have a very high level of training, and not training for a week, on a continued basis. Your onboarding needs to be on point. You need to be recruiting way before you need someone. You know, you're looking ahead. You're not, oh, someone's left and I'm desperately trying to fit someone in. And the adage for me very quickly on that is, let's say I wanted to, go out for dinner with Ben at the latest, the hottest spot in town in London, and it was Friday and we wanted a table for 2 on Saturday. We got no chance. So from a recruiting perspective, I'm trying to rush that in. Whereas if I book 2 months in advance, we're both looking forward to, a nice meal, an amazing place, because it's arranged. I just think it's all about preparation. The training part of it is super, super important. And whatever business you are, you need to invest time, energy, and have some commercial element into your training if you're expecting success on an ongoing basis. Because others are going to do it, so you're going to fall behind.
I also wonder about just general well-being. I mean, I know we're talking about the economics of it, but actually, a young person's left university, they've gone into the working world. Would they want to be working from home? Wouldn't they want to be in a team? Would they want to be surrounded by their peers and by people they can learn from? It feels like that's part of a person's career. It's part of their development as a person. And I just think it's quite sad that, I think there are a lot of young people actually like the idea of working from home and being more independent, but actually they're missing out on a whole camaraderie. They're missing out on part of what it means to actually start a career. And I just wonder if we're losing something that's quite important.
I think the world is changing rapidly, as it always does. But do you know what the number one job for young people aspire to be in this country is now?
Oh, it's probably a celebrity or something.
It's an influencer.
Yeah, there you go.
In America, it's the same in America. We're the only two countries.
If you come into agency, Ben, and do that brilliantly well,
for sure.
Wow, you're going to smash it. You're going to be an influencer in the world of agency. You've smashed it.
You are the next Spencer Lawrence. Cringe it up, buddy. Claire, what do you think about about your question?
So my thoughts, I think my high street will have even fewer agents in 5 years' time. There's a couple of big brands there that I think will go. There's a good franchise and there's some good independents, one of which is expanding quite rapidly across East London. I think they'll still be there, and there's a couple of just they've got good management, big management portfolios. So I think it's changing. I do think there's an issue of young people coming into the industry. So, and now I'm going to use EXP as an example. So you can't join EXP unless you've already got experience. So at some point, how do people get experience in order to join EXP? Well, they go and work for a corporate or an independent, and then they could do it. But I certainly think that you can come away from the high street. Obviously, Ben, you're already doing that, and you're just moving your marketing spend. So without that high street office, you don't get a lot of footfall coming in, I'm sure, Spencer, but it's there. It's advertising your brand all the time. But you can use social media, other marketing to promote your brand. I mean, obviously, I don't have an office, but people do know me in my community, and that's mostly. I'm not out there saying I sell properties. What I say is, I'm a local person. I've lived here a long time. I don't quite.
I'm one of you.
Yeah.
I'm one of you. Yeah. I'm part of the tribe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you find your tribe. You always find your tribe. So my tribe, as it turns out, is people similar age to me, or maybe a bit older, and they're downsizing, and they're happy to sit and talk for 2 or 3 hours about where the children went to school, what the grandchildren are doing, and I'm happy to listen. And then we can talk about Elsie as well. So yeah, I think certainly in London, I think there will be fewer of the corporates. I think the corporates will move to a hub model, which I've been saying since Purple Bricks Day. So I didn't really get it right then, did I?
But it might also be, as you say, that what people are looking for, what customers are looking for, clients are looking for, is a sort of personal brand. Maybe previously they were impressed to walk down the high street and see a big name they recognize, a big corporate. And maybe now what they want is, someone maybe they've seen on the podcast and that they can have a cup of tea with and they can get on with on a more personal level. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's one of those changes that's beneficial in a way.
I think that's a given, Paul. I think personal brand is super important. It's people will remember, oh, you're the person that did so-and-so. There's a connection there, and Claire saying she's known in the community. Like, that's so powerful. That's the most powerful marketing you could possibly have. You know,
Well, I think
I'm downsizing. Oh, I'm gonna phone Claire.
Yeah, I think on the corporate
It's
side,
amazing.
on the commercial side, it's been, traditionally there's been big corporate entities, bit faceless. Everyone knows the name. Some people don't even know a single person in that company. Now, because of social media, there's independent agents who are getting themselves a bit better known because they're able to promote themselves through LinkedIn and whatever it is. And actually that is changing the game. And that, that just impressive sort of IBM style, we're the biggest, doesn't necessarily work anymore in the way it used to.
Certainly an interesting journey over the next few years, the changing landscape of agency. Guys, I'm going to bring us to a close. It's been very, very enjoyable. Really, really interesting session. What a considered group, bearing in mind we discussed wild oscillation at the start of the session. Thank you, Spencer and Claire, as always, A-star students. Paul, great introduction. Great first effort. And Elsie, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
You'll see more of her.
I'm sure we will.
Claire, lovely to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. And I'll see you in March. Well, hopefully I'll see you all in March.
Yeah, we'll be there.
We'll see you soon, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers, Ben. Bye, everyone. See you, Paul.
Always play by the rules, but be fucking ferocious when you do.